So how's it been? The Easter holidays are over and work has started again. I hope you guys had a good weekend. An awesome time. And if you remember yesterday, I did something different with my videos. I I bundled some videos together, but it'll be very interesting because I did the Old Testament of 3 days together, the New Testament of 3 days, and the New Testament. Anyway, so if you're welcome to my podcast, if you're joining me for the first time, my name is Ochido Aye, and I challenged myself to do the Bible in 1 year. I chose to read the Bible from cover to cover in the year 2025. And I chose to do this because I wanted to know more about the stories in the Bible for myself. I wanted to see how I could apply the life principles that I taught there. I wanted to know if I could test the principles. I wanted to discard what was no longer useful to me or to my generation. And I wanted to embrace what was useful. I wanted to, and I chose to do this with an audience because I wanted to be held accountable. So the whole being held accountable is so that I don't skip on any day, because we can just get busy. So when I think about the fact that I have a live audience following me, I always want to make sure that I represent and show up. And I'm glad I made that decision. That said, every single day I follow the structure plan laid out in this particular Bible reading guide, which allows us to do an Old Testament, a New Testament, a Psalm, and a Proverbs every day. For some people that's a lot, but for me, well, it's okay. We'll just follow the structure. We're already committed to it. Every single day I try to read the stories and then put some of my Nigerian flavor into the stories to make them more relatable, interesting, and to spike your curiosity or encourage you to go check out the Bible for yourself. All right, the views, the insights, the opinions that I share are my interpretations of what I have read. And I know that I won't understand everything that I've read, but at least I will try to share with everyone what I have read. You don't have to agree with me, so if you don't, that's fine. You go read the Bible for yourself. The idea is that we should get to read the Bible for ourselves. Anyway, today we're looking at Joshua, the last chapter in Joshua 24. Joshua's time has come to an end as well. So we're looking at Luke as well, and then Proverbs 13, and then we're rounding up Psalm 89. Yes, yesterday. Anyway, let's just carry on quickly. So I want to try and do this in record time. I've already introduced myself. Thank you for the person who I see. Thank you for joining me today. All right, so Joshua 24. And this is the last chapter of the book of Joshua. And Joshua is in his final days. He's old, he's probably about 110 years old. And then he gathers the entire Israel and begins to narrate the story. So one of the things that's very prevalent to me in watching the Israelites' lifetime is that they always, when the old generation are moving on, they start telling a whole chronicle of what has happened in the past. They don't just assume the children should know, they always relate. So Joshua goes even further back than Moses did. He talks about Terah, Abraham's father. And then he talks about how Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, and then Abraham became their elder. Abraham was taken from the land where they were like idol worshippers and then brought him to the Canaan land. And then from Canaan land he had Isaac. Isaac had Jacob and Esau, the twins. Esau was given the hills of Seir, and Jacob was supposed to settle in Canaan, but Jacob went to Egypt because of the famine. And so when Jacob got to Egypt, they became slaves in Egypt. And then after 400 years, God rescued them. It was actually 430 years, yes. But the prophecy said 400 years. So after 400 years, God rescued them. And they're going to come out of Egypt. They came out very strong after plundering Egypt. So the 10 plagues happened in Egypt. They came to the wilderness. They almost entered the promised land. And then they acted up. God was upset with them. So he said he wasn't going to allow that batch of people enter the promised land. So they stayed in the wilderness for a long time. And after they stayed in the wilderness, so we're looking at Joshua, the entire Joshua 24. So they stayed in the wilderness for a long time. And then after a while, the offspring of that generation was born. And then they entered the promised land with Joshua, their leader. They conquered Jericho, they conquered Ai, and in the long journey of Joshua's life, they conquered 31 kingdoms. Okay? A band of ragtag slaves becoming mighty warriors, conquering kingdoms, and settled down in the town. So they did. Joshua was saying, look at how far God has brought us. See what He has done. In fact, I put down in my notes here that okay, so look at how far God has brought us. Look at what we've been able to achieve, and that's because we had God on our side. So you guys, I want to just charge you, stick to God. Don't act up, don't do anything. Just make sure you stick to God and follow what God says. As for me and my house, that's that big and that famous scripture, as for me and my house will serve the Lord. So that's what is written in 24 verses 15. As for me and my house will serve the Lord. So Joshua says, you guys determine whether you want to serve this God or not, but me and my household will serve the Lord. And so they said, oh, of course we'll serve the Lord. And he's like, are you sure? Can you even do it? And they're like, we'll serve the Lord. Come on, Joshua, we can do it. And he's like, you guys can do it. I'm like, we can, Joshua, we can. We will serve the Lord. He's like, all right, so serve the Lord, though. Serve the Lord. Because if you allow all these good things He has done for us, if you upset Him by going to follow other gods and serving other gods, then you will lose everything that God has done for you. They're like, relax, Joshua. Okay, they didn't say that, but I'm the one adding some flavor now. Relax, Joshua, we got you. We're going to serve the Lord, And so Joshua says, thank you. And then he says, I want a big boulder to be put here. Maybe with some customs in their day, where they'll be like, a boulder will be put there to serve as a witness. Oh, you are here, you saw this, as a witness to them, saying that they're going to serve the Lord. Me, I'm on my way out. And so that's what Joshua did. And of course, Joshua eventually passed on and was buried in the land where he had been given, in the hills of Ephraim. The hills of Ephraim. Joshua passed on at 110 years old. Eleazar the priest, who served with Joshua, also passed on in chapters 24. And he was buried in his son's land, Phinehas. He had a son known as Phinehas, who probably became the next priest. And he was buried in his son's land. Then Joshua was buried. Where was Joshua buried now? In his own land in Ephraim. There were many burials in Ephraim this period. And then Joseph. Do you remember Joseph? Joseph was the young man who was sold to Egypt as a slave. And then he was the one who brought his family into Egypt. They were 70. And then, of course, he passed on. His time passed on. But when they were leaving, they took everyone, including Joseph's children. Yes. So Joseph had said, when you're leaving this place, take my bones. So they took his bones. And then when the lands were divided up, we've been dividing up the lands for a few days now. And when the lands were divided up, Joseph found his own allocation. And guess where it was? It was the very spot where his father, Jacob, paid Shechem for the land. If you remember way back then, when Jacob was still, a fairly old man, his children went and they moved into Canaan land, the place where his father, Abraham, had lived. They moved into Canaan land, and then they picked up a fight with the people of the land. Anyway, Jacob bought a plot of land there. That was where Joseph was buried. And so that ended the era of Joshua, Eleazar, and of course Joseph was laid to rest finally after they had carried his bones all over. Joseph died in Egypt, and they're really good at mummifying things, right? They must have been carrying his mummy around for ages. Anyway, so that brings us to an end. One of the things I recognized here was that Abraham moved to a land, and God said, this place where you are living, I give it to you. But your descendants will come to this land, but not until after they are going to go out, and they'll be taken out as slaves. Then they will come back after 400 years, and I will give them the same land. So sometimes when I hear the arguments for and against what the Israelites had been through, I'm like, okay, but God had already told Abraham long before that place became a big deal that this land belonged to Abraham, and his children were going to be taken off as slaves, and they were going to come back. So the Israelites were coming back to what was originally theirs. The people that were living there were borrowing that land. That's what I believe. They were borrowing that land. One strange thing I observed about Joshua, he had no successor. Eleazar was natural succession. His children were going to start serving as the priest because the family of Levi were serving as priests. So the next high priest's son maybe the eldest son would be the high priest. But Joshua had no successor. He didn't name anyone. There's no documentation of him asking God to pick a successor. There's no one that he groomed the way Moses groomed him, some sort of lack of, I don't know what that is, but that's something to think about. I believe successions are very important, and you should always groom the next successor. So that's our Old Testament. The New Testament reading, we're looking at Luke 21, 1 to 28. In this story, Jesus is just telling more and more stories. In this portion, Jesus is just telling more and more stories. He's telling stories about a widow who was in church, and then they said they should give offering. We give offering because we contribute to the growing of the church, to the work of God, to take care of the priests and clergy, and of course to help the society. So people contribute, they give offerings, they collect money from people as contributions in gratitude to God for what God has done for them. So people coming to serve, Jesus was observing that people were coming and dropping money, but one particular widow came and she dropped 2 mites, which was insignificant compared to the amount other people were dropping. But Jesus said, this lady, she had done the most because the 2 mites took everything out of her. So he told that story. It's not about the quality, it's about the quantity. Then he predicted that the beautiful temple that everyone admired in Jerusalem will come to ruin at some time. He predicted that. I think those were the things that were offending the Pharisees, because they were so proud of the Jerusalem, of the temples that was built in Jerusalem. So Jesus said, well, when these things occur, so people are like, Jesus was telling his disciples, this and this is what will happen. They were like, okay, when will these things happen, Jesus? And so he was like, well, let me just follow my notes here. These things will occur, and these are the signs that you will see. Be careful not to follow anybody who claims that like they're Messiah, because when I go, people are going to come and start saying, I'm the Messiah. Jesus must have looked so popular, so attractive to many people. Many people desire to be, just like the way many people want to be pastors. I don't want to be a pastor. I don't desire to be one. I just want to be a child of God, who loves God, who understands their relationship with God, who can teach her children and her family the way of the Lord. That's what I want. But some people, they desire because they admire pastors, they desire to be like them, and may not be necessarily called to be that. Be very careful, because you can fall into the hands of fake people. So that's what Jesus was saying here. If you see somebody like that, be careful not to follow them. Okay? Be careful not to be deceived by them. People will be claiming to be him. People will be claiming to be God. People will be claiming to be sent by God. I remember when I was very young as a teenager, there used to be one woman who claimed she was God. Not that she was a messenger of God, but that she was God. Her name was Smiler or something. Eventually, it took very long, but let me not go into that. Eventually, she was caught for the scam that she was. I wonder what happened to her. Don't follow them. You will hear, so as the days approach, you will hear of wars, you will hear of rumors of wars, you will hear of earthquakes, you will hear of famines, you will see frightful things from spiritual realms, like from the heavens. That site was captured here. You will be persecuted for Christ's sake. It will be but however, when you are being persecuted, it will be an occasion for your testimony. You should be able to say, look, this is what, when people pick on you, it should be a chance for you to share the love of God with them. That's what Jesus is saying here. Don't worry about what you have to say to them. When the time comes, if anything like that happens, I'll tell you what to say. I'll give you something to say, just like I'm saying and speaking up today, and all of that. He said, look, the world will continue to get worse. Things are not going to get better. Things are getting worse. And don't worry about it. The end has not come. There will be betrayals. Oh yes, the betrayals will be so deep. They'll sting. Betrayals from even family and friends. Betrayals will sting. And sometimes, in some cases, people will be put to death because of a betrayal of a loved one. And God said, but don't lose sleep, because no hair of your head will be lost. Even if he's not said here, but I'm sure that saying that people will be put to death means that some people will lose their lives to some bad choices and bad decisions. But no matter what, you will not be lost to God. You will always be with God. Every appointment, everyone's going to keep anyway. You understand? So by patience, it's written here, by patience possess your souls. I think that what it means there is that by patience possess your souls. Like, take control of how you react to these circumstances. That was a word to me, because sometimes my emotions can just go haywire. I can be so emotional. I can be so Michelle and Milad. Why the disrespect? Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so thank you very much. All right, so the armies will surround Jerusalem. That's in the last days. The army will surround Jerusalem. When you see that happening, when you see Jerusalem coming under siege, know that the time is near. And when that time comes, those of you in Jerusalem, run. If you're upstairs, zap. Don't even get into the house to take something. Just leave that place. Oh, it's such a bad time for pregnant women, little children in school. But just be on your way out of that place. That's what Jesus was saying here. Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles, by unbelievers. Jerusalem will be trampled, and Jerusalem currently is trampled today by unbelievers. Jerusalem is trampled today, and it will continue until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. So meaning that there's a length of time that Jerusalem will be under siege, Jerusalem will be abused and tortured, and the mayhem in the world will continue. It's a time that will last in the realms of the spirit. So no matter what we do, that time will continue. You understand? Until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. These signs will be everywhere. The sun, the moon, the waves, the water, everything will fill in hearts, everything will show that things have changed. The world is going cray. And so then the Son of Man will come in the clouds. Look up then, because that time your redemption is near. So I try to imagine, because my analytical mind questions what I mean by Son of Man will appear in the clouds. If you are placed in the clouds on this part of the world, this other part of the world will be asleep, right? So how will that happen? I would like to see how that happens. Maybe it's a spiritual thing, but you really don't want to be on the bad side of things. Let's just make our peace with God, right? All right, so that's the end of our New Testament reading today. Luke, let me check it again. Luke 21 verses 1 to 28. Now our Proverbs, it says here, Proverbs 13. I just like to read the Proverbs and the Psalms. Like I think this day, after I think I'm going to dedicate some time to doing Proverbs and Psalms, a series on Proverbs and Psalms. All right, so Proverbs 13 verses 20 to 23. He who walks with the wise will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed. Verse 20. Evil pursues sinners, but to the righteous the good shall be repaid. Verse 22. A good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, his grandchildren, but the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. We see that happening everywhere. We see people in my country, people can embezzle money. They will embezzle money and money used for development and keep it in some places, and then they go and the money just sitting in the banks. The family who even need it don't even have access to it. Such money kept by wicked people will eventually get into the hands of the righteous people. That's what Sam is saying here. And then much food is in the fallow ground of the poor. That's such an instructive. Much food is in the fallow ground of the poor. The ground that the poor are failing to till is where their food lies. Ouch! Ouch! And for lack of justice, there is waste. For lack of justice, there is waste. All right, now, I read Psalm 89 yesterday, quite by accident. I read the whole of Psalm 89, but I was actually supposed to stop at verses 37. So I'm just going to, in order to just stick to the structure, I'll just go back and read 38 to 52 again, Psalm 89. So please bear with me, okay? 38 to 52. All right, I'll do this in a minute and we'll be done with today's lessons. But you have cast off and abhorred. You have been furious with your anointed. You have renounced the covenant of your servant. You have profaned his crown by casting it to the ground. You have broken all his hedges. You have brought his strongholds to ruin. All who pass by the way plunder him. He is a reproach to his neighbors. You have exalted the hand of his adversaries. You have made all his enemies rejoice. You have turned back the hedge of his sword. You have sustained him in the battle. You have not sustained him in battle. You have made his glory cease. You have cast his throne down to the ground. The days of his youth you have shortened. You have covered him with shame. How long, O Lord, will you hide yourself forever? Will your wrath burn like fire? Remember how short our time is, and what futility you have created for the children of men. What man can live and not see death? How can he deliver his life from the power of the grave? Lord, where are your former loving kindness, which you swore to David in your truth? Remember, Lord, the reproach of your servants, how I bear in my bosom the reproach of all the many peoples, with which your enemies have reproached, O Lord, with which they have reproached the footsteps of your anointing. Verse 52. Blessed be the Lord evermore, forevermore. Amen and amen. And so that's the psalm. I think that David was recounting how terrible things were, and he was also asking God to please remember what he promised to his people. And then after all the lamentation, he still sighs and says, well, praise be to God forever and evermore. And I guess that's the way to end. It's a fitting way to end today's lessons. Thank you for somebody defended me today because I got some really bad, rude remarks. All right, thank you so much. If you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to my channel. Turn on the notification button to see when I go live so that you can join me in a live session. I would really love to hear some of your comments and thoughts on the topics that I've shared, on my views. I would also like you to share with someone who you think may want to know more about the Bible, and then join me tomorrow. Okay, so thank you for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow. God bless you.